Well, welcome all. One of the things that keeps cropping up time and time again on various forums and even YouTube, when people ask questions about getting a wireless system, invariably the comments that flow try to dissuade people from getting the 2.4 gigahertz systems like the Rode Wireless Go 1 and 2 units, and always sort of defer to the UHF systems, claiming vast superiority, etc., etc. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Curtis Judd, who does a lot of audio reviews and who I respect highly, put out a video on aerials pertaining to UHF units and how to extend the range of the units themselves. And I'll put a link to that video below. But have a look at that, and I think you might find it interesting. And I won't comment on that video itself. I did make a comment to Curtis in the comments section, but I'll keep that aside at the moment. Now, what that video prompted me to do was to actually test out my Rode Wireless Go 2 units. I once, many years ago now, compared or did a test on the distance and range, whatever, of the 1 units, but I haven't done it on the Go 2s. And they supposedly have a much greater range, going from about 90 to 200 metres versus the old unit. And so what I decided to do was just go out to my one of my usual stomping grounds, set up the camera as it is here with the unit on the side, and I'll just show a photograph of it shortly to indicate where the receiver is, because this is my generally go-to setup when I go anywhere to do any type of videoing events and so forth. Excuse me. So I left it at that so that I would get some real-world testing on how I use the unit itself to transmit audio and so on. I could have actually taken the receiver off, elevated it and all that sort of stuff and given it much better advantage, but I wanted to see how it works in a real-world situation. And to do that, I then just simply put the transmitter up on my chest about there and did a test in that in rough sort of conditions. Now I'll play the video now so you can see what it is. I've truncated all the walking bits to reduce the length to about a minute from 7 minutes. And you'll see what happens with the audio itself. And it cuts out at a certain point, but it's quite enlightening to see how far you can get distance-wise with the Go 2 units, both facing the camera or facing the receiver, and facing away from the receiver itself. So I'll play that video now, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the outcomes of that. Okay, I'm about 10 metres as best as I can measure from the camera at the moment. So what I'm going to do is take paces at 10 metres apart and turn around, speak towards the camera, and then turn around the other way and speak away from the camera. I've got my mic just on the lapel here, and we'll see how far I can go with direct voice whilst facing the camera and whilst not facing the camera. So the first test, as you can hear, is facing the camera, then facing away from the camera. 20 metres facing the camera, 20 metres facing away from the camera, 30 metres facing the camera, is facing away from the camera, 40 metres facing the camera, metres facing the camera, 50 metres facing the camera, 60 metres facing the camera, 70 metres facing the camera, 80 metres facing the camera, 90 metres facing the camera, 100 metres facing the camera, 110 metres facing the camera, 140 metres facing the camera. Okay, as you can see, the audio started to cut out about 120-30 metres or so, and then partially recovered at around about the 140. The aspect of the camera was that it was pointing basically level with the ground where the tripod was, so that as I went up the hill, it was no longer getting exactly direct line of sight, and this will come out in the second video that I'll show you. But I was quite surprised at the range that I was able to get with the Wireless Go 2s, and especially the facing away from the receiver itself, getting 30 metres and so, because in a lot of these comments where I see negativity about the Wireless Go 2 and other 2.4 gigahertz systems, there was one comment that I read a while back that said that the user lost signal at 2 metres from the receiver. I really doubt that very much. That was finger trouble going on there, not the unit itself. And as you can see from that video, it was quite clear at 30 metres and then started to break up. But I thought I'd do a second test in more benign conditions where the line of sight would be more level and it would give a bit more of a sort of an advantage to the system itself. And what I also did was, instead of having the unit, because with the unit on the camera it sits up like that, and when I had the unit in the first test it was like that. Now, as Curtis explained, aerials need to be aligned. If they're cross purposes, then you're not going to get the range and so on. Now, I don't know what sort of aerial setup is internally in here. Does it go right around the whole unit? Is it up on one side only, or what? So what I decided to do was I left the camera one unit as it was, and second shot I put the unit in a vertical position on my hip so that it was hopefully aligned with the aerial on the receiving end as well. So I'll show that video and then I'll talk a little bit more about the outcomes on that. It'll be quite interesting. So watch the whole lot, because what I did was I did one thing simply going forwards with the transmitter on my side, then returned by putting the receiver on my back so that it was hidden from direct view. So my body was actually blocking the receiver, and the outcomes are quite interesting indeed. So I'll play that now and then I'll talk a little bit more about it again. What I'm doing is a repeat of yesterday's tests in the rough terrain, but this time in a fairly flat area so that I can actually test the line of sight of the Go 2 in more benign conditions. And I've actually attached the transmitter to my side so that it's oriented in the same fashion as that on the camera. So hopefully the aerials are aligned, and that'll improve the transmission distance. So we'll see how it goes. I'm at 10 metres at the moment, and I'll count off at each 10 metre distance. 20 metres, 30 metres, 40 metres, 50 metres, 60 metres, 70 metres, 80 metres, 90 metres, 100 metres, 110 metres, 120 metres, 130 metres, 40 metres, there it is, 150 metres, 160 metres, 170 metres, 180 metres, and I'm going up a hill now, so I'm going to call it a quits there. And what I'm going to do is put the mic, if you can still hear me, onto the back, onto my back, and 100 metres, 90 metres, 80 metres, 70 metres, 60 metres, 50 metres, 40 metres, 30 metres, 20 metres, 10 metres approximately. Okay, as you can see, there seemed to be a dropout about the same 120, 30, 40 metre point as there was with the first video. I don't know why, quite unusual. There was a bit of a dip in the ground where it happened, but nothing dramatic. So it was quite surprising that it emulated that drop-off at the same point. But you'll notice at 180 metres, when I was up at an elevated position on the hillside there, the signal strength just increased dramatically. And if I'd kept on going, and I didn't know that, if I had known that, I would have kept going to the 200 metre mark. But I just thought, well, 180 is pretty far away. I couldn't see the camera or anything at that point. And also, how many people are going to be using a wireless mic at actual 200 metres on any regular basis? So I didn't think that there was really any point to that. But what was surprising was that when I returned, the camera started picking up, or the receiver started picking up at about 100 metres with the transmitter behind my body, and kept a fairly solid signal all the way from there. It was broken up before that, but that just puts paid to the lie that the 2.4 gigahertz systems are hopeless, and especially a lot of complaints that people have put forward about the wireless Go 2 units, or 1 units as well, that as soon as your body covers the transmitter, bang, you lose signal. I would say that what I did there in the 2 different scenarios was quite conclusive that you will get a good quality signal no matter where the unit is positioned for reasonable distances. The units, or the type of work that I do, I would not be looking at over 30 metres at any point. In fact, it's usually much closer. And so it performs well in those situations. Now, there are comments saying that interference with the 2.4 gigahertz system will affect the transmission capabilities, but I've never seen any examples of situations where that actually is occurring. People say, yeah, you lose your signal in places like events, indoor events where they've got like NAB and whatever, but nobody actually really has given any clear demonstrations of how quickly it affects it, what the conditions are, etc. And when you're talking about those sorts of scenarios, you're usually talking interview situations where people are probably no further away from the camera than what I am at the moment, which is a couple of metres. So I don't really understand the complaints that a lot of people have. Yes, they're factual, but are they really complaints that could be taken in a practical sense? And getting back to Curtis Judd's UHF example, I was quite surprised at how soon the signal started to break up, even when facing the receiver and using elevated antennas and so on that were supposed to boost the reception capability. And that also was in a completely open area with no interference or anything else. So it was quite of an interesting thing, and that just prompted me to do this particular test to demonstrate that the Go2s especially, and I don't know about other units because I don't have any, are exceptional wireless transmission units for field use. Maybe they might fail in general things, but in the house here, I've got Wi-Fi all over the place, in this room particularly, with my Roku TV, the hands-free mobile phones. There's one on that side, one on that side. So there's a lot of Wi-Fi interference, and I don't think that there's any indication that it's affecting it. And if I move around the house, it works fine. So I think people who are hesitant about using wireless systems in the 2.4 gigahertz, look at your situation, and if you're likely to be doing sort of interview situations or things where the distances aren't great and you're not going to be in a area where every man and his dog is using a wireless transmission system, then something like the Wireless Go 2 is probably quite suitable for anything that you want to do. And as I said, the other units, I don't know about them. You can look at reviews that Curtis has done on those. I stick to Rode because I think they do a quality product at a very, very good price. You can get higher priced items, but are you getting the value for money by paying significantly more for a unit that may or may not perform significantly better? So take that all on board, and basically on that note, I'll say cheers.